I also know we've focused in quite a lot on people who are left liberal so far, and indeed it's the subtitle of your
Hmm.
book, which I think your publishers chose. But actually, I think it's important to point out that you did say this is not a tool only employed by people on the left. That
Yeah,
actually
yeah, of
you've,
course, of
yeah.
course.
So
Yeah.
where else do we see this taking place outside of those who we would typically label as leftists or progressives?
Well, I think again, it's very much a style, and since it's a dominant
Mm,
style, then people who are not dominant, who are pretenders to the throne, they think, well, that sounds right. So, I'm going to say the same type of thing. Like, for example, at the moment the Labour government is in trouble,
mm,
and reform is flying high in the polls. So, yeah, a lot of people saying, well, inevitably Labour's going to lose the next election. Even Starmer might have to step down because they're doing so badly at the moment. Inevitably, reform will
mm,
will triumph, and the whole sort of maybe the whole liberal left technocrat expert class will get their just desserts. That's a completely progressive framing.
mm,
We inevitably eventually will win. The progress. I mean, as in writing the book and also afterwards, I've just I keep on being surprised and shocked by how prevalent this framing is, in every corner of society, and the way we think, the way we address our personal lives. I haven't talked in the book so much about personal lives, but it's a really major aspect to it. It's so much a style that we adopt that not always that so much history, that we have a theory that
mm,
history is moving forward, but it's like we are the vehicles of things improving.
mm,
So whenever we triumph and whenever we succeed, that's an example of the whole of society getting better, you know, and and all sorts of things come with that. Uh, for example, thinking about sociology, um, and how again this goes back to sorry, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, but it's of how history is improving, which is really it's a juncture of history and sociology. So causation, one thing leads to another. That's
mm,
really sociology, and then over a long time, it kind of that works into history. And as things get better, as we succeed over time, then history over time, you know, gets better, and eventually we win.
mm,
Society wins. I,
mm.
I, I hope that addresses. I'm sort of conscious that I was rambling a little bit there,
Not
maybe
at all.
losing my way.
No, 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 no. That it all made sense, and I see, I, I see it sometimes within myself, and I think listeners to the show will realise that not entirely happy with the form of governance that we live under and have done in the Western world for some time now. It's but that said, I try and catch myself when I see that there seems to be momentum that might push us in a different direction, one that intuitively I tend to prefer. But I try to take that Frodo Baggins approach, which is power is to be treated with care, and by courting it and by effectively hoping that it comes your way and believing that it will be better in your hands, well, there are a whole bunch of pretty quick assumptions being made there, which without being treated with the appropriate care, it can all go badly wrong.
And there are all sorts of consequences to it. It's ideas I've been playing with about politics as well. The way, if you have this assumption that things will be all right in the end, history
Mm,
will work itself out. The bad people will get their just desserts. A happy ending. That's basically an excuse to just not bother, isn't it?
mm,
To actually not work hard, politically to make things happen. It's like, well, okay, the forces are working in our direction. So basically, I'll just sit back and sort of commentate on it from the side. And it's one of the themes in the final chapter of the book where I'm addressing what we should do. Is actually we really do need to step up. People do, and actually organise. And I mean, you doing this and is an example of that. Is a small example, bringing people together to discuss, develop ideas, share them, and then hopefully do something with them. And it takes a whole massive series of such small events over many years, I think, to change things for the better. You can't just rely on history doing it for you.
No, and whilst I wouldn't necessarily say the people who attend it and indeed organise it would be tending in that direction, and they're definitely getting their hands on the wheel, is Jordan Peterson's Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, which has grown into a huge annual event. I think their strapline is the arc of history bends towards justice, and so
of course.
in itself it has that inherent progressive worldview. But as I would say, is I think whatever people think of the people who attend those and are pushing various counter alternatives to the current way of things, is they're trying to bend the history toward justice as they see it, rather than allowing it to happen. But it's just interesting that a progressive framing.
Very much so. And it's definitely more of a liberal progressive framing.
Absolutely.
And I discussed that if you like to simplify it, two different forms of progressivism out there. You have the open liberal form, which if you like, was the dominant form during colonialism. Or I tend to think, there's a lot going on in that process, and not least there was distance between people sitting in offices or, wherever in London, pontificating about, the progress of civilization through colonialism, and actually what happened on the ground often are just completely separate issues. But you have that story, and as you say, the Jordan Peterson's group is, if you like, kind of going back to that. And I see that form, that open form, if you like, that liberal form, which is basically confident in the future, and has faith in that sense, is less harmful than the closed, generally left wing sort of version. It can be right wing, but it's generally leftist, which is basically looking to grab hold of things and control them and make sure they go in the right direction. The kind of the liberal side of things is more, like I say, more faithful that things, if we leave them be, they will work themselves out. Although there is a twist, of course, to the likes of Jordan Peterson and a lot of politicians around at the moment thinking of, I think J.D. Vance is a better example than Donald Trump, who I sort of struggle to praise just because of what he's like. Kemi Badenoch, I think, is an example. You could talk about reform to Robert Jenrick again in the Tories. They become more muscular and conscious that actually you need to fight. It's not enough, as I think liberal progressives have done over many decades, of just kind of sitting back and letting it all hang out. And which is basically going along with whoever happens to, attain power at any one period of time. You just think, well, they're bound to be okay, or if they're not, we'll sort of lean on them and just sort of show them the right way, and everything will be fine in the end. I think a lot of people on that liberal side have now realised that isn't enough. Actually, politics is back, as Boris Glassman says, I think quite rightly. So yeah, there's quite interesting aspects going on there at the moment. I think in the political arena, like I say, more muscular liberalism. How it will work itself out, I don't know.